Welcome to the Giant Shoulders Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Augustine. This podcast is about two things. First, celebrating those who have gone before us, paved the way for success in life and in business. And second, about those who are well on their way to paving the way for the next generation to have success in both life and business. No matter where we are in life, we are truly standing on the shoulders of giants. So join me as I sit down with guests from many walks of life, many professions, and hear who their giants are in their life and what kind of legacy they want to leave for others. Thanks for being here, and I hope you enjoy the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Giant Shoulders Podcast. We've got a really great one lined up for you today. I'm super excited to have Will on the show today. Will, welcome.
Hey, Ryan, thanks so much for having me, man. It's an honor to be on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for making some time today to be on. We were just talking a little earlier, and you're sitting in Pittsburgh. I'm in the Milwaukee area in Wisconsin, and it's great to be together here. Technology is a wonderful tool to meet. So this is great.
Dude, it's awesome. It's really cool. We were talking off air of just how cool the world is today, where you can have all you have to do is have a Zoom account, which if you are in the world of today and you were in a job, like more than likely, you know what Zoom is at this point, or maybe Microsoft Team. And you don't even need a microphone or anything. You just like hit record and have conversations with people. And it's so cool. You can talk with people all over the world. So it's so fun, man. It's open doors. Just imagine even 50 years ago, we would have had to have come across each other in person somehow. And there was no LinkedIn. There was none of these ways that like we would have had to been at a conference together, and that's what we would have meet. So super cool that I get to talk to you just over the internet now. Yeah, and absolutely. And I'm real grateful to Seth for introducing us, and he said some nice things about you. And so really, Will, I know we've talked about this, but the premise of the podcast today is two things, really. It's gratitude for people who have come before us. It's shoulders of the giants that we're standing on, right? And then the second piece is what you want your legacy to be. And so I think those are really kind of unique questions. But before we get into that, who is Will? Give us like a 10,000 foot view, who you are, what makes you special. I've got some teed up questions for you here on some of your experience and background, which I think it's just been fascinating. But 10,000 foot view. Yeah. So with that in mind, I want to give a huge shout out to Seth Thompson. We were just talking, he's like a LinkedIn rock star, and we have an Iowa connection. He actually connected with my best friend, Aaron Abodeely, and somehow he introduced me to Seth, and I've been following Seth Talks for a long time, and a huge shout out to Seth for just being an awesome guy. And talk about consistency in life. Like Seth puts in the reps, whether that's in business or in the gym. So just a huge shout out to Seth for tagging me on that post. It was really great and kind of Seth. And I'll give you like the two rundowns. There's the like, who is Will? And then there's like the, LinkedIn bio resume version of Will. So I'm a 33-year-old single guy living in Pittsburgh, PA. My passions are, dude, I love to talk about mental health, especially men when it comes to like young men and how we're navigating the current world. I'm super fascinated by how we don't have, I think oftentimes for me, I'm passionate about how we're navigating this new world when there's no precedent beforehand of how do you navigate technology going at such a pace. And we don't have role models to look to and go, hey, Grandpa, how did you handle that? Grandpa, how did you handle online dating?
Yeah.
Grandpa's like, what? That didn't exist, right? Like there were 25 women in my town, and that's who we chose from, right? Like, so, and how we're dealing with anxiety and depression and all these things, that's my passion. I'm also really passionate about helping people find their way in the world of creating value for themselves. There's a really great book called Lynchpin by Seth Godin. And for me, it's powerful in that I think there are a lot of people who are stuck in corporate jobs, and it doesn't mean corporate, but in jobs where their unique talents and values and gifts are not being able to be brought out because they're tied to an agenda or expectations that other places are putting on them. And I think in today's world with such access to information, I'm really passionate about helping people become coaches, consultants, who are those linchpins who can actually guide people through this overwhelm of information. And that's a lot of who I am. I love to play soccer. And then from the LinkedIn bio resume side, I'm a kind of a weird guy. I went to college for international studies in Spanish, then went and taught English in Spain for a couple of years, came back to the States, thought I was going to go to law school, just like every other lost millennial, and was like, I think I'm going to hate this. I'm going to sit and read contracts for 80 hours a week. And I've dealt with my own battles with anxiety, depression. I thought if I'm sitting at a desk for 80 hours a week, I'm going to go bonkers. And exercise is really important to me. And I was like, I don't know when I'm going to have time to work out. So I decided to make a total shift and pursued physical therapy. Not really for any other reason than I knew that they were on their feet and they got to interact with people. And it was, you could get a doctorate degree. And I look back and there was very much this prestige of wanting the status of having a doctor title. And so I did that and I became a doctor of physical therapy, practiced for a year and a half, but I was really disillusioned with how the field worked and that you don't get paid better for how much better you are at your job. You get paid better for how many hours you put into your job. And I think a lot of us can relate to this, which is if you're in a field service industry or where you're only valued on time, you sort of wonder, well, I can't leverage anything else. Like I can only give so much time. Massive amounts of student loan debt. So I became really passionate about trying to understand, how do I make money? How do I understand money? And then I started to have a podcast, which is where all this started, because I was looking for answers. I just wasn't getting answers in school. I was super frustrated. I was going back to my PT professors and being like, hey, how do I create wealth? How do I get into this? And I'm like, whoa, dude, we're here to help you pass a test. And I'm like, well, I can do that part. I can study, like I've proven, that's how I'm here. Like I'm capable of that part. I need, like, what's the next thing? How do I like move ahead? And they didn't have the answers. And so I started a podcast, which led me into learning about marketing. Like, hey, how do you create a podcast? How do you create a website for that podcast? How do you promote it on social media? How do you get into like online advertising to do all this? And that led into a Facebook group that I created that was called Healthcare Digital Marketing with one of my dear friends and business partners, Alex Engar, who's on shoulders I'm very grateful for to be standing on as well. I promise I'm going to wrap up in a sec. That
This is great.
We created this group. We started helping healthcare professionals and providers how to market, to learn how to do online marketing. Then we led into an agency doing advertising for healthcare, in particular physical therapy practices. And then we realized most of our audience and our target market were startup business owners. They didn't have the funds to pay for done-for-you services. And so we created a training program. And that took off. We did really, really well. And realized like that's what we love to do. We love to help people take their expertise and package it and become coaches, consultants, trainers. And that's what we do now. So our business is called Healthy Funnel, and we help train coaches, consultants, and people who are selling online training programs how to market, sell, and deliver their services. So that's my LinkedIn bio resume. So you don't have to go check out my profile now. You guys, you can just have it all. But
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So a little known fact about me, so I went to school for business and economics, but as I was making the decision where to go, I actually got into the physical therapy program at Marquette, and that was really, really high on my list. But due to I shadowed a bunch of people and it just didn't seem like it was going to be a great fit for my personality. I ended up not making the jump there, but I have lots of respect for physical therapists, just based on what I've learned about the career. I think it's a great career. You help a lot of people. But yeah, that was one of the things. It's just, it seemed like, there was a ceiling from a job growth perspective. And so that was something that it didn't fit my personality real well from that standpoint. But yeah, so that's really cool. So then that led to you wanting to market focused back to kind of that profession that you had experience in and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it was the world I was living in. I think for so many of us who are trying to figure out what you're doing, the most opportunities come from whatever you're focused on. And so for me, the people I was connecting with I was still in this inner conflict, and maybe people can relate to this of, I had a vision and an emotional attachment to becoming a physical therapist and becoming this doctor of physical therapy that was satisfying my inner ego, which was like, hey, people will say you're Dr. something. And, and at the same time, having the conflict of, it doesn't really match up with the lifestyle that I want to have, because I didn't know how to run a business. Physical therapist, much like most people who are trained to go into a technician job, a technician role, you don't get trained how to become the entrepreneur or the business owner. You're trained to be the technician. And so I had this conflict. So I was trying to interview the people who were the entrepreneurs, while I was still having this conflict of should I be a technician or not. And so that's what led to me realizing, oh, there's a gap. And it happened so by chance, kind of like what you're doing right now, Ryan. Like, you're starting the show and it's like, hey, I just have a curiosity. I want to meet cool people. I want to talk with them. And it's amazing if you keep doing this for 6 months to a year. It's amazing what weird doors just start to open by proxy. You might meet someone who's like crushing it. So let's just say Seth, for example, right? So Seth is a LinkedIn rock star. He's a monster, right? And he might be like, dude, I love that you're doing this podcast, Ryan. I've always wanted to turn my talks into a podcast. And you're like, hey, well, I just went through that process. I know how to help you with that. And that creates a door, and maybe that leads to something. And so for me, by just interviewing people in this medium of podcasting, for me, became a door opener of, oh, I'm a physical therapy entrepreneur. Can you help me with this marketing media side? And at first I was like, help you? I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to like figure this out. And they're like, obviously, you know a few more steps than I do because you're at least on iTunes. I don't know how to get on iTunes.
Right. You're a few steps down the journey.
And that's when I realized the power of coaching and consulting, and in the sense that, you know, for me, and this, maybe this is hopefully helpful for people, is my answer was always, people are like, how did you learn how to do this? I was like, it's this thing called YouTube. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but like I Googled it and then I YouTubed it and I just watched all the videos and I did what YouTube said. And they're like, you can do that? And I was like, yeah, where have you guys been? Like, it's YouTube. You can do anything. Mm-hmm. And what I realized was that these are really intelligent, super smart people, entrepreneurs, right? Like building businesses. But even they struggle from overwhelm of information, and they're really looking for a trusted source to break it into bite-sized pieces and just say, hey, I don't want to watch the half-an-hour video. Can you tell me the 3 things I need to do? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of value in that. And I didn't realize that at the time. And I was just like, why would anyone pay me to like make shorter YouTube videos than the longer YouTube videos that already exist? And like, it'd be super helpful because time is my most precious thing. And I was like, oh, they're like, yeah, I'd be glad to pay you $100 for that. I was like, $100 for a 5-minute YouTube? What?
Yeah.
And it started to blow my mind. And I was like, wow, I just made $100 in 5 minutes and I'm going to make $30 an hour as a physical therapist.
Yeah.
What? Like, you know, it's just sort of these weird realizations. And I think the biggest thing for, just as like a lesson to people is, just follow your curiosity and try new things. And when you do that and you put yourself out there, it's not a guarantee that positive things will happen, but man, more often than not, they do.
Yeah. I love that, man. I love that. And I think, I mean, we were talking about this before, kind of like you get kind of hung up in getting everything set up perfectly so that you can do. And it's just like, you just have to do and just make that leap. And I think that's where a lot of people get anxiety, and it becomes really tough to do that because it's like, oh, this isn't going to be perfect. You know, I've seen some people do this really, really well, and I want to do it really well, and just do. And you know, I've made a fool of myself doing plenty of things many times, and you live and you learn, and you try new things, and that's how you learn. So that's awesome, man. That's really cool. And I think that holds true in the medical industry just in general. I mean, they've got their head down. I mean, perfecting their craft and learning what they need to learn to be so good at what they do. And so then starting a business, personal finance, you know, I work with a lot of healthcare professionals and they're just like, yeah, I haven't had time to pick my head up and think about this for myself. And it's just like, okay, great. Like, let's sit down together. And that's kind of my value add, you know, in that sense. So it's an interesting thing, but these people are focused on other people. They're focused on helping other people. So this is kind of a cool, little commonality that I feel like we found. But yeah, so awesome. Well, I love that background. Well, thanks for diving in. Now the people, so you mentioned Alex, so he's your business partner. Who are some people in your life who are the shoulders of, or the giants that you're standing on the shoulders of, the people that have gone before you in life and business, who have kind of paved the way for you, set of, been mentors for you, given you kind of a roadmap? Are there some people that stand out for you?
Yeah, there's so many, and getting into this coaching and consulting world, like I wouldn't be here if it weren't for people who have taken time in their lives to coach and mentor me and help me. And that's why I'm a huge advocate of it. Just like for you, Ryan, as a somebody in the finance space, is like everything that is not some like technical procedure that only you know how to do, right? Everything you learned came from a book or came from a training series, right? Like that's the only way we learn for most of us. It's information education. It's like, who wants to spend the time and expertise to master it? Mm-hmm. And that's why I believe, like, in today's world, like if you aren't getting coached or having consulting, you're really missing out, because it's where these are people who have spent the time to master this, right? And it's not a like surgeon where it's like, dude, you're literally the only person who's technically trained to like cut open my aorta and stitch it back together. Mm-hmm. Like I don't want somebody going to watch a YouTube video to do that part. Like
a 30-minute YouTube video is probably not going to cut it for that.
Like, I mean, if it's Walking Dead situation and like that's all we got, cool. Like that's our best shot. But outside of that, let's not do that. So I have real mentors, and then I have real mentors, but in a virtual world, who I've never met or had a personal relationship with. And I think both are really important.
Yeah.
First and foremost are my parents, my mom and my dad. I had a nervous breakdown in physical therapy school my very first semester, had insomnia, and came out of a really rough breakup, rough for me in that I wasn't dealing with my own anxiety and depression. And my mom like moved in with me for like 3 months as I was 28 years old, living in my 1-bedroom apartment in Pittsburgh, just lived with me for 3 months and really like put me back together. And man, I wouldn't be here without my mom or my dad. And I love them to pieces. They just taught me a lot about kindness, forgiveness, openness, ability to start over again, right? Like to just say, hey, cool, didn't go the way we planned, struggling, but hey, we can move forward and we can look forward. And so that was really cool. Changed my relationship with my dad, which was awesome. He's a military guy and was lifelong military. And so you can tell, you can imagine his views on toughness and mental toughness and things like that. And so to break down in front of him was really tough, but then it's led to a much more real relationship. I think a lot of us don't have those real relationships with our parents where I can ask him like, hey, did you really struggle? Did you ever struggle with this? Like, what was going on with that? And get a real answer, and not like, yeah, it's fine, it's tough, right? Like, don't ask questions. So now we can ask those tough questions, which is great.
That's really cool.
But I had to create that space, right? And it's tough, and not everyone's open for that space to be created. So my parents, then some of my best friends, Aaron Abodeely, who I think Seth tagged in the post as well. He's been my best friend since we were 14, 15. Wow. He is I'm an abundance mindset. Aaron is more, he'll tell you he's more, what's the opposite of abundance? Scarcity, but in a really cool way. He's like abundant in the scarcity mindset, meaning he goes super minimal, and he's like, hey, how can we do more with less? And whereas I'm just like, get more. That'll solve problems. He's like, getting more doesn't solve problems. Like, hey, get more with less. Like, how do you get more with less? And it's really opened my eyes to, we joke a lot about being poor consultants. Like, how can we be as poor of consultants as possible? On the outside, like if you looked at our Instagram, we wouldn't be like the guys by Ferraris. We'd be by like, our Honda CRV from 2004. Like, what's up? Still paid off 10 years later. What's up?
So economical, so much room on the inside.
Check out my 401k. Yeah. It's like, we could like sit inside our 401k, Aaron's been my best friend, man. He's easily one of my best mentors, greatest mentors. Alex, my business partner, as well, who I met through an online academy run by a guy, Todd, who is a physical therapy entrepreneur, who created an online academy teaching PTs out there and younger PTs how to start their own business and do their thing online. And he's been one of my most influential mentors and coaches ever. He's still like a business dad to me. Someone I really, really admire, look up to. Has an incredible, beautiful family that, I hope to emulate one day. And those are my like real in-person mentors. And then I have like the people who I've never talked to or never will be able to talk to, who have really impacted my life. And for me, when I was in really dark places, people like Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, Gary Vaynerchuk, who's alive right now. I don't know, and maybe there's some people out there who can relate to this. I would say that for most of my life, 90% of my inner talk was negative. And I was not going to be the one to provide the positive talk. You know, it's like, oh, just change the way you think. And it's like, well, if my default is negative, it's really hard to change default, like really, really hard to change default.
Yeah.
And so what I did is I would just work out. I've loved working out. And so what I would do is, instead of listening to music, and, you know, I used to either listen to rock or rap, something heavy, like it makes you think about these negative emotions, or like just masculine, like, you know, like type emotions. And I would just listen to positive self-talk speeches or clips. Thank goodness for YouTube, right? I didn't have to buy like audio cassettes or anything. I could just go to YouTube, endless hours of free talks. Yeah. And I'll be honest, I listen to them so often. I've listened to the same videos probably, no joke, 200 plus times. Sure. For no other reason than to have somebody put positive words into my brain when I couldn't. And I never really believed in it for a long time, of like, oh, that's woo, man, who would do that? But it's like osmosis, man. After time, you start to change the way you start to like realize, oh, I really talk a lot of crap about myself. Like I see myself in such a negative light. And to have other people be like, hey man, you should look at it different. Here's how you should be looking at yourself. Say these things about yourself. And it's like, why can't I say I am attracted? Why can't I say I'm attracted? Why can't I say like, I deserve to be happy? Why can't I say that to myself? Mm-hmm. And hearing it enough times, I was like, you know what? These guys are right. Like, I do deserve to be happy. I do deserve that. Like I do, and I want it. And so those are guys who I don't know if I'll ever get to meet or talk to, but they've drastically, and women as well. So Mel Robbins and Brene Brown been huge factors for me to sort of these virtual mentors and coaches, invisible sort of, you know, non-direct contact. And I owe them a lot. I would love to be able to say thank you at some point for just putting out what they put out. So yeah, those are kind of my like, I break it down into, I think a lot of us in today's world maybe have like our in-person mentor coaches, and we have these sort of virtual people that we can look to, which is, I feel really lucky to be in a time where I can find those people who are outside, because it used to be whoever's in your little circle by proximity and geography, that's who influenced you. Mm-hmm. And I feel so lucky to live in a time where I can go beyond just that local influence and find people who think differently and see differently. And so, yeah, man, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, that's so good. So many things I want to follow up on here, but I think it's great to have. I've always been a really big proponent of strong families. I've got a 3-year-old and 11-month-old daughter, my wife and I, and my quest in this life is to be the best father and husband I can be and create this strong family. And when I hear you talk about your parents, like specifically your mom, but then also your dad, I guess, you know, you talk about being a military family, like that's not easy for him to be the, like, probably the soft, loving, caring guy all the time. And then for your family just to be there for you and to pick you up and to support you. That is so incredible. I feel like there aren't as many strong families as there used to be. The family unit is kind of crumbling a little bit. And so that is a huge blessing. It's so awesome to have that support system, and it allows you to kind of go out and do certain things that you probably wouldn't be able to do otherwise, right? You've got a strong home base. Even if you weren't technically at home at that point in time, like your foundation is strong. It gives you that strength to go outside and accomplish some really great things. So that's something that I took away from that piece. And the other thing too, I mean, I love music. I heard it said once though, and this kind of resonated with me, that music is like chewing gum for the ears. And I think we need to be really intentional, more than just what we listen to, but what we watch, but what we consume I mean, even from food, like everything, we have to be super intentional about what we consume because it impacts us in ways that we don't always understand. And I think if you took, if you did something and you were consuming one thing for a long time that was not healthy, you wouldn't notice the deterioration over that a long period of time. But if you took a snapshot at the end and the beginning, there would be a big difference. Yeah. And so I think we need to be intentional every single day. And so I love that you're saying that. Like, I went out and sought these people that that helped me feel better about myself, that improved my life. I think that's really important because I think it's easy to be passive and just kind of flip the radio on in the car and, well, whatever's playing and I'll listen to, or whatever sports game on, I'll just take that in. And then time kind of goes by and passivity doesn't get those nice results that we want. It doesn't make us better people, right? And so I think that is so key. And I love that you say that. I feel like a lot of podcasts have become super important, super impactful in those educational videos and things. Really, really great. I love that, man. That's great.
Thanks, man.
I also like how you broke it down into the two categories. I think that's insightful.
Yeah. And I spent a lot of time thinking about this. So I host a podcast now called Man in Progress. And it's a lot about talking with men like our age and a little bit younger who, and Ryan, I don't know how old you are, if you're
29.
29. Okay. So yeah, I think, I've been fascinated by this of like, so part of for me with this is, the mentorship role was a struggle of like, I didn't have, I had a really strong dad, right? Alpha dad, seer dad, alpha. And I had a very, feminine mom who I could go to with my problems. And there's a huge disconnect of, my dad was gone a lot for work, travel, whatever, right. Present when he was there, but he's gone. There were times where there's like years at a time, he had to take a job somewhere else and be gone. And so my mom became my confidant and my friend. And so I pulled very feminine, right? Like very feminine energy. That's who I connected with because
right.
That's who I was with all the time. And then my dad, when he would come, I'd felt very conflicted of like, well, who's this alpha energy that I'm like, oh, I've just been hanging out with mom and like way different energy. And I didn't know how to express that, to convey that, to feel that. And it only took till I sort of had a breakdown that then I sought out therapy. Huge fan of therapy. So for 4 or 5 straight years, at least once a month, if not once a week, was going to therapy. And I think as men in particular, and women as well, it's like we don't realize how conditioned we are as we're growing up, and like even a small little detail of things. So I look back and think how I had to rewire a lot of my thinking was I would sit and watch Saved by the Bell, for an example, before school every day. And I would look and I realize now looking back that like Zach Morris, for those of you who know Saved by the Bell, for those of you who don't, it was like, striking, tall, blonde, California, like, would probably be on GQ type person. And I would sit there and be like, I want to be Zach Morris. I want to be Zach Morris. And, when that wasn't my actual life, there's this false, there's this disappointment. Like that was the expectation. I want to be that. I want to be that. And, I was just conditioning my brain of like, that's what life could be like. That's what life should be like. And I look back and I get older and I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that just consuming all that stuff all the time was making me think that there's some ideal scenario out there instead of me like learning about myself and understanding myself rather than wanting to seek to be something else, right? It's why we love influencer people and like, I want to be like them. And it's like, it works because it sells, right? Like that's a different conversation for a different day. But so when that came about and I had to really start like looking at myself, I had to break these things down. And I found that maybe this will help people too, is like, I think you've got to be really conscious of, hey, do I have people in my local circle, physical local circle, who can help me with that? And I'll just be honest, like if you're 25 plus, like, and you haven't found them yet, they do exist, but you're going to have to go out of your like comfort zone to meet them and find them.
Yeah.
And I find that's really hard in today's world to be like, hi, my name is Will. I'd like to be vulnerable. And struggling with some stuff. You seem like you got your stuff together. Would you be willing to like coach me, help me out? Right? It's a super awkward conversation. That's why podcasting is amazing. It's kind of an excuse to be like, hey, I'd love to talk to you. Yeah. So I find that really tough. And so when I work with, I get a lot of younger guys, especially in the healthcare world, who are struggling and battling sort of imposter syndrome or feeling stuck.
Yeah.
Same process I went through. And I say, hey, like if that's not in your inner world, your inner circle, then the best thing I can recommend is go find them virtually and go find them through books, right? Like luckily we have books. I find most young guys don't like to read. So then it's like, hey, let's, who are these people on podcasts or YouTube or where you can consume this in a more, we'll just say a more easier way for people in today's world, right? If we were all taking public transit and had hour commutes on a subway, cool, book be great, right? Even then, I think most people would still do audio or video. But it's being conscious. Do I have that around me? If yes, how do I block out the other influences around me? And that's conscious and having to tell people no and setting boundaries. Hey, Derek, I'm not going to go out and get super drunk this weekend with you. I know that's what we've been doing for 7 straight years, but like, dude, I'm done. It's not serving my life anymore. That's really hard to have that conversation. And so it's like, hey, how do we set those boundaries? And if we don't, and we don't have anybody to give us influence, you got to go find it somewhere else. And that's where it's like, hey, let's dive into these virtual resources that we have.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's where a lot of people find themselves. They wake up and they're like, man, I need to make some changes. And then it's like, okay, who can I emulate and do that? And that's why this podcast has always resonated with me, this idea of we stand on the shoulders of giants, and then what kind of legacy do we want to leave? Because anytime there's ever been any sort of positive pull in my life, any sort of success or any sort of positive pull, I guess, I don't think of it so much as a personal accomplishment, so much as gratitude for the people who helped me get to that point. And I think that so many times we try so hard to do it ourselves, and it's like, well, let's just talk to some people who've done it. What's the first step? Because that's the most important step a lot of times. What's the first step to podcasting? Call somebody and ask them if they want to be on your podcast, right? You don't need the big, expensive microphone. You don't need the, and so I think that's awesome advice, Will. I love that. And it kind of a really great segue actually to that legacy you want to leave. So in 5, 10, 20 years, what do you want people reaching out to you to say, hey, Will, I've seen that you have just really, really done well in X, Y, Z. I'd love for you to help me on this. What kind of legacy do you want to leave kind of looking back?
Yeah, I think where I'm at now, I imagine it will change. I think right now I'm a single guy, not expecting to get married in the near future, have kids in the next few years. But should that happen, I imagine my legacy will want to change to some degree. But I think overall, for me, I think the things that have really impacted my life and what I hope to help other people with is I want young men and women, but young men, because that's what I know in particular, to say, hey, Will, thanks for helping me realize it's okay to be more vulnerable and share what I'm actually feeling and go through. I think we lose a lot of young men to alcohol, to drugs, to abusing other things, even suicide, unfortunately, because we have not, as a society, told men it's okay to have an open space to talk about what's going on and to be vulnerable. And I think we have this, everything we see in movies is like the strong alpha male who never has problems. And that dude's probably really dealing with some stuff. The reason he is so alpha and just gung ho is he doesn't want to deal with his own inner issues, his own inner demons. And it's a projection against that. And so I think, especially in today's world where life's not as simple, it's not primal like it used to be of hunt, gather things, right? It's we have new mediums of communication. You have to have higher emotional intelligence to adapt and survive in the modern world. It used to be someone would tell you, they would meet you in public and be like, hi, my name's Jeremy, right? And now you get this weird message on your phone that's want to meet, or it could be somebody having to read between the lines of things, right? It used to be your wife or partner might be I'm really upset at you. And now it'd be it's whatevs in a text message. And you're it sounds so dumb, but you're that's a real thing. And if you're a man and you don't have emotional intelligence and you don't learn how to understand that, you're going to get into conflict. You're going to get into these things, and then you don't have the tools to navigate that. And so for me, I think helping men be able to, and it's tough because then you go out and date. And like I've had this issue before where I've had a few, people I've dated for a while who have been like, sometimes you're just too nice. And then it's like, what the hell? Like, I'm trying to like not be like, the reason, the same thing that you get mad at some people, like being like, they weren't open enough, they weren't available. Now I'm trying to do that. And then there's this middle ground, right? It's like trying to figure it out. And there's no like, hey, Dad, how did you navigate this with the internet and like having to communicate? How do you text message to people and like get all these things across? And I think we're really, to me, I'm honestly really amazed we're doing so well as a society in general, like having to navigate all this. We don't have, and by the time we figure that out, it's changed to another level of another layer. And we're really, I not to go into hyperbole, but I think, I really believe like 500 years from now, people will look back and be like, that had to be a really messed up time, man. Can you imagine going from like landline telephones to like, you could open a business with a kid in China from the US in like a matter of minutes on your phone? Right. Well, I bet those people are losing their minds.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we ever stop and they're like, what is happening? Like, I can literally right now, I can go find a kid in Russia or China on my phone and write, hey, want to start a business tomorrow? Want to sell some crypto tomorrow? Mm-hmm. Like things that I don't even physically know I've never met this person. I don't even know what's going on. Like that is a legit possibility. We could legitimately make millions of dollars. People be like, what's your life like? Be like, dude, let me tell you, Grandpa. I started a business with a kid in China. How'd you meet a kid in China? I didn't. He's just online on this app. What? Right? Like, how do you explain this to people? It's like mind-boggling of what's going on. And so for me, I think we're going to have to really talk about these things and open up about being vulnerable. And then my other thing with the legacy side is like those who are willing to go into that inner work to then find out, are you living the sort of work life that you want? And if not, how are you going to, I want you to feel empowered to be able to go pursue that thing that you feel. Here's the thing, not that you know what you're called to do. I don't think a lot of us know what that is. Yeah. But to give you freedom to pursue the curiosity that you have, that something else might be out there for you.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Because I think so many of us are like, well, I won't get started till I know the outcome. And my whole thing with for legacy wise is like, no, let's rewire your brain. You're not going to know. And in fact, if you did know, you're only, like, if we never get there, you're just living in disappointment rather than it's the process of following your curiosity. So for me, like Brian, I've started 4 or 5 podcasts. 2 of them I just like started for like 3 months and stopped. Uh-huh. And I think for a lot of people, they'd be like, that's a failure. I'm like, I got to interview some cool people. And then I was like, I'm just kind of done with it. All right. It's like, as far as I know, like Forbes isn't going to come interview me. What happened with those 2 podcasts that you saw? Like, nobody cares. Like, I just like give permission to follow your curiosity, assuming it's like safe, legal, moral, ethical, right? Like to follow it, and don't judge yourself if it's a success or failure, because, in my mind, failure is just like when you're going to die in life. Do you look back and go, dude, I went after a lot of things I wanted to, or are you going to go, wonder what life would have been like? It's like, dude, you had 85 years to figure out, what are you doing? Like, why didn't you do it?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm hoping for.
I love that, man. I love that. Well, it seems like it's funny. I talk with some people about legacy, and it sounds good, and it's this kind of pipe dream of like, this is what I want to be. But then you look at their life, and it's like, well, how are you shaping your life to be that? And for me, when I hear your heart behind what you're doing and what you want your legacy to be, it's a natural kind of like crescendo, I feel like, to where you want to go, which is really cool. And hopefully you appreciate that feedback to say like, yeah, it seems like you're on track to be doing, for these people to be saying these different things about you. If you continue doing what you're doing, being intentional about what you're exposing yourself to and consuming, being intentional about who you're surrounding yourself with. And then I think from a health standpoint, just focusing on that, making that a priority. I think that those things are all so important, man. And even I resonate so much with your comment. Like, if we talk to our parents about how people do dating now, well, even so, I have a brother-in-law who was doing some online dating as the quarantine started, and he's like reaching out to my wife and I, like, hey, like, this is how it's going with this girl, and and I'm kind of confused about some of this. And I was like, we didn't even have that. We met, like my wife and I met in college. We were fortunate enough to meet in college, and that was like right as the online dating scene was kind of taking off and doing that. And so we had like no real help for him, and we felt kind of bad, but it's just like we just don't have experience there. And the world is moving so fast. You've got to really be intentional about where you're getting your info from. And I'm happy to help somebody learn how to change a spare on their car, or do some of those other things. But and hopefully that's relatively timeless. I mean, the way cars are going, who knows? But but yeah, some of these things, you've got to seek out advice where people are experts in it, and they've gone before you and done it. So I think that's kind of the purpose of this podcast. And I appreciate you sharing your heart with us today, Will. Appreciate you giving up your time to be on the podcast today. And I guess where can people find you? What's you said you had a podcast, you've got your business, you've got a LinkedIn page. If they want to just get in touch with you, learn a little bit more about you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I just want to say first off, Ryan, I'm absolutely honored to be here and to be invited on the show, and super humbled, man, to be a part of what you're building. And yeah, I just want to encourage you to just keep doing this. Like, I think we need to have more conversations, and we need to have more honest, real talks with people. And so just want to say thank you for doing the work that you're doing.
Appreciate that.
And yeah, if anyone wants to find me, I think LinkedIn's a great place. Will Boyd. I don't know if it's Will or William Boyd, somewhere on there. And then, or probably Instagram's the best way to find me, at Will Boyd PT.
Okay.
And that would be another great place. I talk a lot about those things. And podcast is Man in Progress. If you're surprised, I've had a lot of women listen to the show, which has been really cool. I think they're, which has been really awesome. It's some great feedback. And, but yeah, if you find yourself like just wanting to hear an honest guy interview other guys who are dealt with anxiety, depression, trying to figure out life in today's world, usually interviewing guys 25 to 50, sometimes a little bit older too, to get a different perspective on what life used to be like. But yeah, man, that's how people can keep up with me.
Cool. Awesome. Well, Will, so appreciate you coming on today. This was a great conversation. And we'll be in touch soon. I'd love to have you back on to chat more about some of these things. I feel like we had to cut the conversation short today. A lot of good stuff. So thank you so much for being on today.
Dude, my pleasure. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much.
No.
But thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
This was awesome, man. This was so good. All right.